everyone, kia ora tātou and haere mai. Welcome along to Showy Ovaries, a podcast where I, Penny Ashton, talk to a series of fabulous women and other owners of ovaries about their menopause journeys and anything else that might pop up or fall out. First of all, a disclaimer, I am not a doctor. I have a BA in classics and drama. So what you're going to hear is anecdotal stories from the mouths of the menopausal or menopause adjacent. So please consult your GP or specialist when seeking medical advice, though I can tell you all about theatre theory from 1960s France. Knowledge I use every day of my life. I don't. But enough of that. Our guest today is the inimitable Pinky Agnew. So hello, Pinky, down there in Wellington in level 2, you lucky bitch. How are you?
Kia ora. That is going to date it later on when they go, level 2, what was that?
Yeah.
It was something they had in the olden days when people were allowed out of their houses.
I know.
Remember that?
It does feel a bit like that, that's for sure. Yeah, we should say at this point, we just seem to have given up on the elimination stage. That's where we're at when we're having this chat in early October. And who knows what's going to happen from there. But have you been enjoying your freedoms nonetheless?
I have been enjoying my freedoms nonetheless, and I'm also enjoying them even more because I realise how precious they are, and everything can just change so quickly.
Yeah.
So, that sounds like a nice segue for menopause, the change.
You can tell you're a professional. But now I have actually written an introduction for you.
Oh, you've written a segue.
Oh, yeah, I've written a long introduction because it is very difficult to encapsulate the legend that is Pinky Agnew, but I have given it a go. So here we go. Pinky Agnew is a national treasure. A comedian, writer, actor, satirist, impressionist, in that she impersonates people and she doesn't paint water lilies. She is a social commentator, celebrant, member of the New Zealand Order of Merit for Services to Entertainment, is a published author and all-round top broad. She was on McPhail and Gadsby playing Jenny Shipley, has been a member of the legendary women's comedy troupe Hen's Teeth, has written and starred in numerous satirical sketch comedy shows and plays, including Destination Beehive, Pinky Pops In, Sex Drive, and The Truth About Love. She regularly chats with Tereida and Catherine Ryan on 9 to Noon for RNZ, is a frankly terrifying debate opponent. It's hilarious, but she is quite scary. And in 2016, she married me to my lovely husband. But though, of course, we were both actually sick. We were both sick on my wedding day, which I'm not going to lie, was totally shit. But the ceremony was fabulous. So thank you for that. So welcome on down, Pinky. Hooray.
Yeah, the crowd went wild. She teeters down in her senior heels. I've got my Allbirds on.
Jacinda's favourite.
Well, Allbirds are kind of like the thinking woman's slippers.
And you can still go out and have your dignity.
Yeah. And they're definitely the drinking woman's kitten heels because you're not going to fall off them. They're going to keep you stable no matter what. It's great.
Right. Okay. So we're here to talk about menopause. And it was interesting because I've been thinking about this for a while and I talked to different women about it at different times. And I distinctly remember you being like, it's amazing and all this sort of stuff, which not many people have said to me before. But so I'm going to start with a couple of questions. So I'm going to start off with, so what did you know about menopause before it manifested in your life?
I really knew nothing about menopause.
There you go.
All I knew about menopause was the kind of jokes that feminist comedians were telling way back in the day, but I knew nothing. Mum had a full hysterectomy. I think she must have been in her 40s.
Me too, same with mine.
And yeah, so she didn't really, go through kind of menopause per se. So I didn't really know anybody really who went through menopause. All I knew was made you sweat a lot. And for me, I suppose I could see it coming as something neutral. After unsuccessful attempts as a younger woman with my first husband, having children was not for me. So I really anticipated menopause as just the end of having periods. And having periods have been a bit problematic for me over the years once I went off the pill.
How was that?
I had PMT, and so I would get PMT for about a week a month
Wow.
in the lead up to my period, and I would feel variously nauseous, bloated. But the thing I remember most from it was feeling so fucking angry quite a lot of the time.
Is that why he's not your husband anymore?
No, he was already long gone by
Fuck
then.
that guy. Right, okay.
But one of the helpful things that I learned, and this is a lovely, life hack, as the young girls tell us these days, that I'd like to pass on, was something that a counsellor helped me identify, was how to tell the difference between, that kind of illogical rage that you often get when you're menopausal. Like, you find yourself screaming at your handbag because it won't open properly. And actual life anger issues. And one of the things that she helped me see was that whenever I had PMT, I would feel a clenching in my jaw. And so she helped me identify that if I suddenly felt angry and an outburst coming, I would check my jaw. And so I would open my mouth. I'm doing it now because I'm sure everyone who's listening.
It's very good visual medium, yeah.
I would open my mouth and sort of drop my jaw down. And if my jaw was aching, I knew it was PMT.
Oh, wow.
And that actually helped me deal with the PMT.
Right, so you were like, is this proper anger or PMT? If it's proper anger, go off. But if it's not, just take a breath.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And just, okay, this is a normal part of the menstrual cycle. So yeah, so that was incredibly helpful, learning that little trick. And the other little trick was it will often help too if you're craving particular foods when you've got PMT. Like I used to crave dairy food, and apparently it's the sugars in it that you feel like your body feels it needs sugars. We're just like birds that are hopping around trying to get high fat, high energy food so that we can make our nest inside our ovaries and inside our uteruses and nurture these babies.
How long was your PMT bad for?
Yeah, PMT was bad probably for about 15, 18 years.
Ugh.
Not long at all.
Yeah, not long at all. Oh my God. It's like a teenager.
Yeah, I was a big woman. So you mentioned that I played Jenny Shipley, and I did very authentically.
Very authentically.
But I was a big curvy girl. And she is a lot taller than me. I'm only about 5'1" in old money. And I don't know what she is, but she's a lot taller than me. And in fact, when we shot McPhail Gadsby, Lorraine Parry, who played Helen Clark so beautifully, Lorraine Parry would have her shoes off. I would have these massive high heels on, and often I would be standing on a stool.
To get in the same frame.
The same frame, the same height difference between Helen and Jenny. So when you're bigger, and this evidently is a medical fact, but of course, we encourage people to consult their doctors. I am not a doctor, not even close.
We're doctors of hilariousness.
Doctors of delight. So
that's right.
Obesity apparently produces excess estrogen. I'd heard this a lot over the years, and I certainly was a big, sexy woman.
Right.
Now, I don't know whether estrogen is linked to sexual drive, but I always had a high sexual drive.
Right. And did you find you were satiated enough?
Well, men are funny creatures because I am a cis woman and I identify as heterosexual. And men, as we know, are funny old creatures when it comes to sex because there's a lot of what we now call fat shaming and slut shaming and, women being made to feel bad about their bodies. Well, I made a decision very early on in my life when I was a chubby little girl that I was not going to feel bad about myself and my body, that I could see in the mirror that I was beautiful.
Fantastic. Great. That's amazing. And I did not have that. Because I took my epilepsy medication that made me hungry, and I ate a lot more, and I still felt quite sexy. I absolutely did, but I would still look in the mirror and be sad.
Whereas I always looked in the mirror and I'd think, why can you guys not see how gorgeous I am? And one of the little interesting things which other big women big heterosexual women have confirmed to me too, is that men actually in real life are much more interested in fat women than they would lead you to believe, or that they would lead their mates to believe.
Right, so they fat shame their choices
exactly.
themselves.
And isn't that like, that's the patriarchy,
so
that's just the patriarchy.
Yeah.
Your woman is a symbol of prestige. And if you're attracted to a big woman, a woman with a disability, a woman of a different ethnic group, if you're attracted to, God forbid, another man or a transgender person or whatever, you are outside the norm. And I heavily emphasize the word norm, because these kinds of people. So actually, my sex life was quite good. What I couldn't seem to get a handle on was actually getting a boyfriend. That was another thing, was finding somebody who wanted to be seen out with you in public. And
my diary is just so sad, like in 6th and 7th form. I'm like, I just want a boyfriend. Why does she have a boyfriend? That silly bitch. I want a boyfriend. And it's like, oh my God. Do you know what? I was just saying this to my husband, Matt, today, that sometimes I wonder, because I was deemed, undesirable for quite a while, a lot of my friends who are just absolutely gorgeous had so much more incidents of sexual assault. And I'm not saying, obviously, anybody is susceptible to sexual assault, regardless of anything. But, I was so lucky through all of that. And you wonder sometimes, if I had been this gorgeous vision, I would have had to be fending off what I thought that I wanted. I look back now and go, thank fuck that didn't happen to me. And I 100% know it happens to all women all the time. But for me, I felt like maybe I was lucky I dodged that bullet, which is shit, isn't it? Isn't that shit? It's so shit.
It is. It is such shit. That whole sexy thing, was definitely there for me throughout my sexually active years. Right. And there I was, that O word, which I hate. I hate the word obesity.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say what?
Orgasm.
Orgasms
Bring
are great.
It on. I love the orgasm.
I know, like my BMI has me almost at obese. So that word is kind of shit too, as far as I'm concerned.
It is. It's really shit.
Yeah.
But anyway, there is this correlation between obesity and what they call excess estrogen. Well, I don't think you can have too much estrogen personally, but there you go.
Right.
And what happened for me, so then there I was. So I was having those periods, and then when I got into my I think my late 40s and very early 50s, I started experiencing perimenopause.
Yes, this unknown quantity that no one hears about until they get to that age.
It just sounds so jolly, because peri, I understand, is a very nice alcoholic pear drink, like cider.
Right.
So peri sounds nice.
It was like peri sauce, which seems
appropriate. Peri sauce, exactly. So perimenopause. Perimenopause was just a bit of a kick in the guts.
Right. And so how did that manifest for you? And if you don't mind me asking, how old are you now, Ms. Agnew?
Oh, so I'm 66.
66 now. Right. And so this
almost.
is
next week.
I'll be don't round up, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. Oh, no, I love rounding up, because I love being the age I am.
Fabulous. Great.
So back then, late 40s, early 50s, and I started experiencing what I came to realize, to understand, was perimenopause. So my periods, having been quite regular, became quite irregular. I started feeling, I'm trying to think whether I'd actually describe them even as hot flushes, but I certainly would get temperature rises, Right. And as I was going through perimenopause, I thought, oh, this is a thing. My doctor told me this is what you're going through. You're going through perimenopause. And I remember being at a cocktail function where I was there in some kind of work capacity, but I saw a woman whom I knew standing at this cocktail party, and what I now realize was a hot flush she was having. She changed colour completely. She was standing talking to somebody. She was holding a glass of wine. She went bright red. Oof. And it was like every pore in her skin, even her scalp, started producing water that was running down her face.
Wow.
Her makeup was coming off. It was dripping off the ends of her earrings.
Oh, my God.
It was
right.
so shocking.
And how did she cope?
She immediately terminated the conversation that she was in and headed for the toilets.
Yeah, right.
Now, one of the horrible things about living in the patriarchy is that the patriarchy has designed the toilets or the lack of them. Women's toilets are very hard to find. And when you do find them, there's not enough. There should be more.
Definitely.
We have more business to do in them.
So much more business.
Yeah. Because not just number ones and number twos, both of which we sit on a seat.
There's a lot of real estate.
But we've got all the menstrual stuff as well.
Yes, exactly.
And one of the things that I'm really glad about living right now is when I see in the Dominion Post newspaper stories about period poverty, and I think, yes, this needs to be a discussion. When I see fantastic journalists doing work about needing to have more protection for women cricketers,
of course,
because they're wearing whites, and how are they managing their menstrual health?
And seeing Valerie Adams talk about her cycle and when she throws further and all that sort of stuff, so that was really fascinating to even stop and think about, because we have it when we're on stage. It's not quite the same, but like I wear a nice light pink dress and promise and promiscuity, and it's certainly gone through my mind. It wouldn't be very ladylike in the Regency to have a big patch on the back. So we've got all this stuff on our minds that men never have to think about. Yeah,
exactly. So for me, perimenopause was suddenly like, oh my God, when I saw that woman in front of me, I thought, is this what it is? And I'm an optimist by nature. Yeah. I am an optimist. And so when I can see a problem ahead, I do like to sort of think, well, how can I help prevent this happening to me? I'm definitely of the school where I don't want to have the experience myself and learn from it. I want to learn from her example.
Snacks.
I don't want to stand there with sweat dripping off my nose into my champagne.
Yeah. But you're not going to put that down. Yeah, I'm going to drink the fucking champagne, but I want to know how to stop the other part, right? And so what, you researched?
Oh, no, God, we didn't do research in those days. I went running off as far as my little chafing chubby thighs would carry me to the doctor. And she said, well, there's this thing called HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy. And I said, well, give me some of that. Now, one of the things I had anticipated about menopause was I thought it would be good because my periods would stop, and that was an attractive prospect to me. And so when I was weighing up whether I should go on HRT or not, and she said, it continues your periods. And I said, well, I don't really want to do that. But anyway, I'll give it a crack. I said to her. And because in Wellington, I presume you've got one in other parts of the country as well, but in Wellington, we've actually got a menopause clinic.
No, I don't know about this yet. This is good. I'll find them and interview them. But yes, right. Okay.
Yeah. Dr. Bev Lawton is a world menopause expert, and Dr. Jill Shepherd also works at the menopause clinic as well. So they're two fantastic doctors. So anyway, there I was with my HRT. So I started popping my HRT. Oh, it was awful. I had an awful experience with HRT. Now, not everybody does, but I did. And the thing that I remember, because I do try and blank out bad experiences as much as I can, even though that's not recommended, the one thing I do remember was that in place of my period, I had this like 9-day black, sticky, like it was dark red, but it was so dark red, it was almost black, sticky kind of discharge, what I would call a discharge coming out of my vagina for like 9-10 days at a time.
9-10 days at a time. Oh my God. And did a tampon work for that, or did it?
Yeah, sure. But then because it was just very slow and very sticky, the tampon would get quite dry. You'd have to use a pad, and then you just think, I want to be a sexually active woman. Please.
Yeah, no. I don't want blackberry jam coming out in my fanny.
Oh, blackberry jam would have been a blessing compared to this, whatever it was. This nasty, it was more like an oil slick.
The Exxon Valdez was out your bits.
I was in my pants. So there I was. So unrelated to that, I had also been a person who likes to be proactive about my health. I had also been pondering the idea of having weight loss surgery, as they call it, stomach stapling or bariatric surgery, they also call it. So I'd been considering that because I realised, having been fun, fat and fabulous into my 40s, as my 50s were approaching, I thought to myself, I could feel my knees were starting to go. I had a history of heart disease in the family, because one of the things that they do not tell you about menopause the musical, is that our hormones protect us quite significantly from heart disease.
Oh, right. No, I didn't know. I knew about joints and hair and stuff, but I didn't know about heart disease.
Yeah. So one of the big health issues for women post-menopause isn't cancer. It's heart disease.
And it is the biggest killer of women.
Heart disease and stroke, yeah.
Right, okay. And stroke.
So the old cardiovascular, you see.
Right, yeah.
So you're not protected from that anymore by your hormones, because nature has gone, okay, we gave you a chance, to repopulate the species. Let me shrivel up your uterus and your ovaries in a horrible, torturous way and be gone with you.
Oh my God, that's so bleak. It's like the creator, which doesn't exist, but whatever, went, all right, you're useless now, so we don't give a shit if you die.
Oh, well,
right.
I'm sure Brian Tamaki would have a take on it, but we're not going to interview him.
Apostle Brian Tamaki. No, he'll be in jail for organising a protest. Fingers crossed. But anyway, right, so keep going. This is all good stuff.
So for me, I realised that being this big jolly woman and girl and, having fun being big and fabulous, now I needed to get different priorities in my life as I was approaching my senior years. And I was a single woman, so I was responsible for everything in my life, finances, everything.
And self-employed single woman.
Yeah, exactly. So I've taken that approach for a long time, that my body was also my business. So taking good care of myself, my body, my mental health as well, I had to do that to keep doing the things that I do, to keep living the life that I live. So weight loss surgery it was.
Yeah.
Now, I was 52. By then I'd been having perimenopause probably for a couple of years.
Right.
Just sort of dragging on, with periods becoming diminished, with then suddenly getting this rush of rage, feeling my jaw, checking my jaw, realizing I had PMT and I probably had a whopper period coming. So it was sort of like all that kind of stuff.
And did you do the HRT before the surgery?
Oh, yes, well before,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
HRT was pretty early on in my perimenopause journey. So,
right.
Or, I don't know, it was like a stop in the journey. So I decided to go ahead and have bariatric surgery in 2007.
And can I ask, was that funded? Did you have to fund that? How does that work?
I funded that myself.
Do you mind if I ask how much that cost?
I fully funded it myself. I can't remember how much it cost. It was certainly... What I remember was at first I was freaked by the price of it. And I'm thinking maybe back then in 2007 it was about $17,000. And I freaked and thought, I can't afford that. And then I thought, well, it's actually, back then it was incredibly the price of a good second-hand car.
Yeah.
And I thought, in terms of an investment,
absolutely,
a second-hand car would depreciate, whereas a new...
absolutely.
reduced health risk would be something that would be my investment in myself.
I just like to say the most I've ever spent on a car is $7,000.
Yeah.
You have flash cars, obviously. But yes, that is the best investment you could possibly make.
I did say good second-hand car.
I have a Nissan Note, thank you. It's very good. It's very good.
At that time, I was actually tooling around in a Mazda MX-5.
Oh my God, look at you, flash pants.
So they give you counselling in the lead up to a weight loss surgery. So you go through a process of counselling. They obviously they're screening your mental health. They're also helping you to understand the consequences of what you're doing. So it's not a magic bullet. You will still have to, at some stage, modify the eating behaviour that has got you to this place.
Yeah, right.
So that's part of it.
Yeah.
One of the things they also talked about, just very briefly, was the effect on menopause. I was by then 52 years old, been through the perimenopause couple of years, and it is comparatively uncommon for menopause to be accelerated by weight loss, but mine certainly was. And my understanding from the surgeon who performed my weight loss surgery was that this was because I was sort of at the sweet spot. Because I'd been in perimenopause for a couple of years, because I was 52 years old, and it usually accelerates when you're in your early 50s.
Right.
I was in my early 50s, and so instead of having a more perimenopause and a longer menopause, I went through Supermenopause.
Supermenopause. Faster than a speeding bullet.
Faster than a speeding tampon.
Able to leap not very much, but can I have some calcium supplements, please?
So I had this stupendous year where I was losing so much weight that I was having to rush to the secondhand shop because I was so beggared by the whole experience. I would rush off to this. They had this enormous sort of secondhand warehouse out in Petone where you could go out and sort of stand in dodgy, musty puddles and go through racks of clothes, secondhand clothes.
Sounds delightful. That must have been, was that so exciting to be able to fit things that you hadn't been able to fit?
Yes, it was exciting, but it was also a bit surreal as well. And because I was touring at one stage with an Australian group, and I was kind of their support act. And I had to literally stop in a small town and buy a pair of pants because the pants that I had were falling off me, and I couldn't have trousers that were falling down on stage.
No, it's not that kind of show.
Even though I'm not that comedy desperate. So, yeah, so it was shocking because the two things were happening at once. I was going through menopause and I was losing truckloads of weight. So I'd gone into the surgery, I don't know, it was about 120 kg and then went down to about 65.
My goal weight, look at you. I've never managed to get there. So, okay. And how long?
Oh, within a year.
Man, that is a lot.
And yeah, it was a lot.
Did your cholesterol lower massively and all that sort of stuff?
I'd never had high cholesterol. I'd never had high blood pressure.
Right, good, right.
So I was a healthy woman. Absolutely no doubt about that. But at the same time, I could see what the writing on the wall.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So when you say you were going through menopause, was that like perimenopausal symptoms, or you just stop? Everything was stopping.
Everything just stopped.
And did you get the thinning hair or any of that sort of stuff, or the joint pains?
Yes, I did. Right. I had thinning hair. I didn't have joint pains. I definitely had thinning hair, but part of that may well have been the weight loss surgery as well.
It's quite a shock to the system, right?
It's a shock to the system. Plus, one of the things that happens to you physically when they reduce the size of your stomach is that you can't absorb nutrients to the same extent. So your gastric system is speeded up. So you can eat small amounts of food. Then in another couple of hours, you can eat more small amounts of food, but it's digested very quickly. So you have to take nutritional supplements. And quite often, as was the case with me, you'll have to have B12 injections, iron supplements or whatever. Wow. For a period of time until
it's resolved itself now.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. But I still take a multivite every day because you are just not absorbing nutrients at the same rate. So whether the hair loss was to do with menopause or whether it was to do with my weight loss, who knows? Anyway,
so I suppose it's quite tricky for you to decide which is which because you did both at the same time.
Yeah.
Right.
But I can tell you, I was so relieved that my periods stopped. I was so flipping excited.
And you can't see her face, but it's written all over it.
In huge lipstick letters.
Right, okay. And just because you didn't have that PMT anymore, you didn't have the Exxon Valdez coming out your knickers.
Didn't have to be buying period products. Yeah. Didn't have to be looking for the nearest toilet, trying to find an exit strategy from the stage, as you say.
Yeah, exactly. So, and has there been any ongoing, like, have you noticed any sort of deleterious effects from having gone through it, or that's just aging, or do you think it's just fucking marvelous now?
For me, it's just fucking marvelous.
Fantastic.
I can't find a downside.
Wow.
I've never felt less than feminine. You know, I've always felt feminine.
Right.
A lot of my body issues were to do with losing such a lot of weight. Having firmly loved myself as a big woman, I actually found it really hard to adjust to this little body. And,
yeah, it's such a massive difference.
You know,
you halved, basically.
Yeah, I did. I halved. And
wow,
I'm now 75 kg and I've been stable at that for quite a long time. They call it the bungee effect. You go down quite a lot and then you often buoying up. And
you find your stasis.
Yeah, the trick is to try and keep it there, not to, you know, diet, so you can go back to that skinny weight, not to overeat again so you get up again. So, because you can definitely gain weight.
Right. Yeah, right. Is that terrifying to gain weight? Does that, because you've had this whole massive journey and this investment, does that play with your head?
Penny, one of the things you know about me is I am a very determined person. Mm-hmm. And having invested that enormous amount of money in myself, I was very, very determined. I was not going to sabotage it. And again, my finest lessons always learned by looking around at other people and thinking, I don't want that.
Right.
And when I was sitting in the waiting room of my bariatric surgeon, I'd gone in for a follow-up appointment, and there was a woman sitting in the waiting room, and she looked so, you know, somebody with very low self-esteem. She was probably wearing still her original baggy track pants, grey Crocs, everything just looking really, you know, not feeling good about herself. And she confessed to me she wasn't going to buy any new clothes for herself until she lost her weight. So she wasn't going to invest in herself. And she was pureeing chocolate cake and slurping it. And those two things, those two fun facts,
God.
As if I needed any other incentive. Again, I thought, I'm not going to be that woman.
No.
You know, I learned to love my fat body, so I'm going to learn to love my skinny body. And honestly, I tell you, the first time I did it, I stripped off all my clothes and stood and looked at myself in the mirror when I'd gone down to 60 kg. And my breasts looked like spaniel's ears. Like I had gone from having these beautiful, big, abundant, creamy, bouncy spheres that had been much loved, not just by me.
Passed around the whole of the Greater Wellington region.
To having these little flaps.
Spaniel's ears.
And I thought, what am I going to do? And I thought to myself, I'm going to do exactly what I used to do. I'm just going to look at myself, really look at myself, hold those dear wee things and go, I'm going to love you.
And you could buy a bra that only had like 2 hooks on the back or something like that, which is an exciting prospect.
There was so many surreal experiences that I could do a whole other podcast about that. But
did you ever consider surgery for excess skin? Or
not at all.
Right, okay.
No.
Cool.
Because for me, it was a health issue, not an aesthetic issue.
Right. Okay. So that's interesting. I did not know that was the, because I knew you before, and then I saw you after. We did a debate together where you were frankly terrifying. And I was like, who the fuck is that person? And I was like, oh my God, because I had seen you do 2 weddings of 2 really good friends of mine that we didn't actually meet at that point. And I was like, she's amazing. In fact, Pinky was my inspiration for becoming a wedding celebrant from seeing her do that. But then I was like, who's that skinny lady? She sounds familiar.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to know sort of the motivation behind it. And so when did you meet Alan?
So I met Alan in 2011. So I met him with my new body on, and you
met online?
Yes, we met online. Yeah. So we had this charming thing back in the old days, children gather round, called findsomeone.co.nz.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Who knows, it might still be going. It's all Tinder and Grindr now. I don't know. But anyway, we were very fortunate to have found each other in 2011. And we got engaged and got married quite quickly.
You did.
And of course, having gone from this sort of estrogen engorged woman, very highly sexed woman, to a woman who, because weight loss, when you lose a lot of weight, you're also losing a lot of estrogen. And the estrogen to testosterone balance that every woman has in her body, every cis woman has in her body, is that ratio of testosterone to estrogen increases with weight loss. So you get more testosterone, less estrogen when you lose a lot of weight. Right. And the same thing happens with menopause. So I found myself being more interested in gardening. I started
that already. I'm 47. Maybe that was it. See? We bought a house and I went, oh, what's a pelargonium? I want to know now. So, maybe that's it.
It's perimenopause.
Right. But he's in a similar phase of life.
Yes, exactly.
Because you're the same age?
He's slightly younger, which I'd highly recommend.
Nice. Right. Yeah, mine's 2 years younger.
Yeah, perfect. Same age gap between me and Alan. So he's 2 years younger. So it was just absolutely marvelous. And so you're quite right. Our libidos were at the same stage of life. But one of the things that I would highly, highly recommend to anyone who is going through menopause, particularly, it can make you feel really shit about your body, because there's a lot of emotion with your hormones. When your hormones are out of whack, your emotions are out of whack too. Right. And you can go to counselling, of course, but can I recommend, even if you don't feel like sex, take all your clothes off and lie together.
Oh.
Cuddle.
Right.
Hug. Look at each other. Laugh. Even if you're doing it under the covers, if you don't feel like you want to throw back the duvet. For years, Alan and I had intimacy Sundays. You know? It's intimacy.
Right. Lovely.
It's connection. It's touch. It's skin on skin. And I think if there's one thing that we deny ourselves as older people, it is that skin on skin contact, and that it always has to be sexual, because you're often going through the stage too where if you've had children, you're not having that skin on skin contact with young children either. You know, you're not always cuddling your kids.
No, especially when they get to teen years, etc.
Yeah. And when you're a postmenopausal woman, you're like, suddenly all your estrogen's gone. So you're like, ooh, what do you want? You know, if somebody gives you a cuddle, if your husband gives you a cuddle, actually it is rewarding. You just have to reframe it. And penetrative sex post-menopause can be painful because your skin thins. That is another aging thing that happens, plus it's an estrogen thing as well. So the skin everywhere is thinner. And around your labia and your vagina, your skin is very easily broken. It's quite tender.
And it gets dry.
Yeah. So get lube, even just to play with yourself or play with each other. Get a good little bullet vibrator and make sure you're having a regular orgasm.
Right. Fantastic. I love how you're just so open, because, you know, there's so much shame around bodies. And I feel like the world over, men and women carry so much shame about their bodies. And the more shame we have, the less likely we are to, you know, seek help if we need it or celebrate it. And that's how we get toxic masculinity and all this sort of stuff. So I fucking love how open you are about that. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And you do have to love yourself. And I do not subscribe to the school that says you won't find true love unless you love yourself. Because as a celebrant for over 20 years, I have seen the healing and redeeming power of love. And being in a good relationship with a good person can help you find love for yourself. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind about that.
I agree.
And men can do it for men, and men can do it for women, and women can do it for women. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to learn to love yourself. And the first thing is to put your hands on yourself and your eyes on yourself with love and honesty and acceptance. Yeah. You know, you wouldn't refuse to hug a kid and you go, oh, you're ugly, get away from me. Oh, you'll be all right once you lose a couple of stones.
Oh, my God, imagine.
I love you then. So why would you say it to yourself?
Absolutely.
Why would you even say it to yourself? You just have to get into the habit of speaking kindly about yourself.
Marvellous. And Alan helped you further along that journey.
I'd be perfectly honest, I helped him further along that journey himself.
Oh, right. Fantastic. Great.
But together, we definitely found that intimacy in our senior years.
Right.
And holding hands, kissing, touching his face, stroking his hair, looking into his eyes. You know, anyone can write a little card or just send a text saying, love you. That's nice. But touch, we are tactile creatures. We need to be touched. We need to be loved, and we need to love.
Which is why I can imagine, you know, this pandemic must have been very, very difficult for people that didn't have, like, you know, I've got Matt. Yeah. We've had a couple of fights, but we've only really had one fight in 2 full lockdowns, which has been amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's very impressive. So to have that person to be with, and my heart goes out to people that have been by that. I've had a number of friends, particularly in the States, who had to shelter in place for a year by themselves, basically. And so that must be very hard. Yeah, because I agree.
It must be.
Absolutely. Well, I think I had lots of other questions to ask you, but I feel like you've run off at the mouth, Pinky, for God's sake. But with lots of really beautiful stuff that's been fascinating. And this is what I love about this, because this is why I wanted to do this, because I've learned just so much from you in 45 minutes around all of this stuff, and everybody's journeys are so different. And the more we know about everyone else's journeys, the more we can have some sort of understanding what's going to happen. But I have got my new out of the box. I'm calling it out of the box. What's your fun fact? Do you have a fun menopause fact we can talk about?
Okay, I do have a fun fact for out of the box, because I'd often wondered whether we're the only creatures to have menopause, because I've always thought of it as such a cruel trick after all the years of periods and the pain of childbirth, and then our reward is menopause, really. Yeah. So I did some research on behalf of Showy Ovaries.
Thank you.
And apparently there are other creatures who go through menopause. Ooh. So they are beluga whales.
Right.
And narwhals,
right,
and orca.
Right. Is that it?
There's also short-finned pilot whales.
There's a lot of whale.
Yeah. So they're kind of whales. So there are no other non-human primates go through menopause.
Really?
So it's just these, no other creatures in the world apart from us, the beluga whales, the narwhals, the orcas, and the short-finned pilot whales, and us. That's it.
That is a fascinating, fun, out of the box. Look at that. I just assumed all animals did.
So fascinating to research it, because nowadays, of course, as you said, in lockdown, we can just sit and Google about why the vaccine is so bad for us. I'm joking.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
But apparently this wonderful fellow called Roderick Hobbs has studied beluga whales in Alaska and Russia, and there are all sorts of, this woman called Kristen Hawkes has done this research about beluga whales, and she says, orcas, sorry, this is so good, I'm reading it, orcas. So there was a study in orcas that found that killer whale mothers, they call them orcas killer whales, share salmon with their, quote, bigger adult sons. So the adults, why would an older mother who's going through menopause, remember, because she's an orca, start catching salmon and giving it to her older son, bigger son, the great big son? Yeah. He can get it himself. Well, according to the research, they believe the help the older mums give to their big sons results in more grandchildren.
Right. To look after them in their menopausal old age.
Well, biologically, the reason why women continue to live beyond their reproductive years, human women, they believe is called the grandmother effect, which is we are there to help raise and nurture the children without any fear of us having children ourselves. So this is why they believe orca mums, menopausal mothers, are feeding their great big sons is because they want grandchildren. And as a nana now, I can relate to that.
As a step, you're a step nana.
Yeah, but we just say nana. We don't have steps in our family.
No, absolutely. It's just you mentioned no children before. I just thought I would. Yeah.
I know. How does that happen? Wow. One day I closed my eyes. I saw Bishop Brian's face. I felt my womb become full.
And a stork delivered a child. Well, that is fascinating. I just assumed all animals did that. So that is right.
No, they don't.
Look at that. Well,
only us very highly evolved animals. And I do want to give you a quote too, because you mentioned Hen's Teeth before, the comedy review that I was a member of. And Dame Kate Harcourt, I just had lunch with her today. Dame Kate Harcourt is 94 years old. She really is a living treasure.
As are you.
And I said to her, as I was just dropping her off at her home, I said, I'm going to do a menopause podcast with Penny Ashton. I said, how was menopause for you? Can you remember? Because she is 94. She said, marvellous. It was like a year of central heating.
That is fantastic. And I love that because it was 40 years ago for her. It's nuts, isn't it?
Yeah,
well, thank you. I think that is a beautiful way to end. You have been a model guest on Showy Ovaries. Thank you so much. I'm still quite new to all of this, but that just flew by. I was like, oh my God, I need to finish it because it's been 50 minutes and you're the best. So
you are the best. You're a brilliant host.
Oh, thanks.
And I love your Showy Ovaries.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'll let you know when they're on the air. So thanks a lot, my love. Mwah. Enjoy level 2 for as long as it lasts. And I'll see you when I see you. Bye-bye.
Stay juicy.
That was, of course, the incredible Pinky Agnew, and I would like to say thank you so much to her for being my very first guest on Showy Ovaries, which I am launching on today, which is Monday the 18th of October, which is handily World Menopause Day. I didn't even know that was a thing, and finally my first episode is ready just in time. If you've liked what you've heard here today, you can see more of me at hotpink.co.nz. I'm at Hotpink Penny Ashton on Facebook, at Pennypink on Twitter, and Panache and Penny Ash on Instagram and YouTube, respectively. Pinky's celebrancy website is pinkyagnew.com, but of course, you can only use her as a celebrant if I'm already booked. Way! I also have a Patreon, so if you've enjoyed this, head along to Patreon and search for Penny Ashton. You got different tiers to choose from. You can get fridge magnets. I know the excitement never ends. Some wall art download and various things. And I'd like to say hello to Judine Edgar and Johanna Veth, who are my 2 newest patrons. So thank you very much. Yay. And enjoy my Showy Ovaries. And I will be flashing them quite a lot more in the coming weeks. So thanks for that. And also thank you for giving me something to do because it was a little bleak there for a while. But I'll see you again on Showy Ovaries. Bye-bye.